Yes. All right. So this is from our friend Julie Miller, and she says, I have a question for Q&A. I'm a huge believer in natural remedies and have recently done something new, a hair analysis. The results are fascinating. I have had right shoulder issues for many years, improved with LIT, as you know. Can you please address this issue that came back from this hair analysis about my shoulder? It says, and she puts this in quotes, you have a bad case of RSI, which we looked up as repetitive stress inflammation, with the bicipital tendon out of its groove and pulling ligaments and nerves down the arm. This can stretch the tendons and ligaments, and even if they are put back in place, they can come out again easily as they are stretched. They can be tightened, end quote. Can you suggest anything to tighten this? Thanks and love both you and Laura for answering this.
Well,
And so, Laura, yeah, we were talking about this, and we
never heard a
neither
hair
one of us
analysis for this. Yeah.
exactly
I mean, I've
neither
heard
one
of
of
hair
us.
analysis like in forensic crime scenes for DNA, toxology reports. So I'm skeptical only because I'm trying to understand how that would give such a specific diagnosis, like specific to the bicipital tendon. Um, but again, it's very new. I've never heard of that, but just understanding the hair and that it's, I really don't comprehend how the hair would relate to one area so specifically. But so
You
we,
know,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say part of me is wondering if it's not just looking at the collagen content in the hair and then extrapolating, knowing I can see her saying, well, I have issues with my shoulder. Maybe her hair is showing some collagen content discrepancies, and so they are extrapolating that to, oh, well, your shoulder is loose or weak because your collagen in your hair is weak. Because I
Hmm.
agree with you. I don't know how it could be specific to the shoulder. I mean, I know that there are a lot of Eastern medicine practices where that they will do something on your ear for your something in your abdomen, and organ. And I don't pretend to understand any of that, and yet I do believe that it works because
That's a meridian though, and that's like
yeah,
energy versus hair is essentially not
alive.
live in that way.
Yeah,
So that's where
I
it's the
know.
hair
That's what
part
I'm
that
like.
gets me. Like if somebody said, "Oh, I poked you in your, in your gallbladder," and that has to, that I could totally get behind. But again, we are novices here. We're just, so I agree. Maybe it's the collagen content. Um, and so for anybody who's listening, the bicipital tendon is the tendon of the long head of the bicep that comes up and inserts into a little groove in the humeral head and is only stabilized there or held into that groove through a little lateral ligament. And, people will tear that ligament or overly stretch it. And so then the bicep tendon is kind of coming out of the groove and getting sheared. So then there's inflammation. So that repetitive diagnosis sounds totally reasonable. The bicep tendon, anytime there is any kind of issue there, I always still look at the scapula, because if the scapula stability is happening, it will hold the humerus centrated and it won't be kind of gliding forward to pop that bicep tendon more out of the groove. So Julie, I would say, all this, but be extra aware of like when you're weight bearing. Probably weight bearing, you might be pretty good. It might be when you're moving your arm that you have to stay in the ranges. Like I would stay in the sagittal plane, maybe not do as much in the abduction, and then really think about moving from the scapula. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with you completely. When we think about any type of unidirectional or multi-directional instability of the shoulder, it can be occurring at the biceps tendon. It can be occurring at the labrum. I know I have some sort of instability on my right shoulder. I've talked about this frequently on the Q&A. I heard and felt something tear several years ago. And when it flares up, I will pay more special attention to what is my scapula doing. And for me, it is more in the weight bearing transitions that I feel it. It might bother me at end range pinchiness if it's irritated, but chaturanga lowering, even, pushing back, more the lowering, I really pay close attention first and foremost to what my scapula is doing, because that's, yes, the groove is part of the bone if of the humerus, if the humerus is in the right spot. So, what's your rotator cuff doing? Is the humeral head in a position to just allow that tendon to glide straight up and down versus slipping medial lateral, which so what's the rotator cuff doing? What's the scapula doing? Which is again all these scapular muscles, these scapular stabilizers, these rotator cuff humeral head stabilizers. When you have any type of an instability in the shoulder, so their statement, this can be tightened, I'm putting that in air quotes, to me is a big air quote statement. I mean, once you stretch something, yes, scar tissue can form and it can tighten some, but we know there's not much blood flow to a ligament. Now, there's more blood flow to a tendon, but once you stretch a ligament, or ligamentous structure, it can only tighten down so much. That's why people who sprain, once you sprain your ankle once, you're more likely to sprain it again. Why? Because it is more loose. Once you strain an ACL, once you tear or stretch it, it's going to stay loose because these things are not going to restore to their original tension, period. So, what are the tips? Is, well, now the active structures need to do it, which is what you're saying, Laura. Scapular stabilizers. I'm throwing in the rotator cuff there as well. Funnily, it's the bicep we're talking about. The bicep, you can do bicep curls all you want. That's not really going to affect too much of what's happening at that bicipital tendon. It just, what's unique about the bicep is it does come up and attach into your labrum. So it is we consider the bicep and the tricep the fifth and sixth rotator cuff muscles because it does have a shoulder stabilizing role. So then when you're doing any of that, like you said, the dipping of the shoulders forward, anything that puts it in a provocative or more susceptible position, you're asking for it to flare up, which Julie said has been helped tremendously by lit because we do focus on that. So keep doing, keep doing your lit, keep modifying, like you said, with the open chain stuff, paying attention to the shoulder blade, keep paying attention to the centering of that humerus within the glenoid and through movement. And that's your best bet to strengthen the active structures because those passive structures can only quote unquote tighten so much.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that just came to mind is watch the position of your head. Because if your skull is not in alignment, your shoulder is going to want to follow that, right? So you can be doing all the great things in the scapula and then your head is out of out of its neutral position. And it just, by that heavy load of our skull moving forward, the shoulder will follow. So watch yourself in your quadruped, in your plank, especially where is the head. If it's really low, that's going to just encourage that pressure to go into that area. So keep the front of the throat lifted up, maybe even do it more than you think you're doing it now and see if that helps to unload that area. All right, as always, we love your questions. Make sure that you write us with your own. Nothing is off the table. It can be about the body, mind, spirit, daily life, anything. So write us at
support@lityoga.com, or you can send us a message on Instagram. We've got Laura.Hyman and KB Williams 99. We'd
Yay.
love to hear from you.
As always, we are pulling for you.